Hey guys, and welcome to today's video. My name is Ali and I teach you how to create business value using data. If this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and stay up to date on my videos, and let's learn together. In today's video, I sit down with Haim, who is a director of data analytics at Community First Credit Union. We discuss advice for prospective data professionals, what he thinks make a candidate stand out, marketing yourself, Tableau versus Power BI, and much more. Hey guys, today I am joined by Haim, who is the Director of Analytics at Community First Credit Union.
That's right.
Who is another person that I've reached out to LinkedIn. I've seen a little bit of the stuff that he has written there. I looked at his profile and I thought this would be an interesting person to know a little bit more about, and maybe, hear about his background. And, the moment he said, Tableau or Power BI, I knew this guy. I got to talk to this guy. So maybe you can just start off by doing a small introduction of yourself, and then I have prepared some questions that I would love to discuss with you.
Sure. So, as you said, Haim Shternshus, currently here in North Florida, in Jacksonville, North Florida, Director of Data Analytics in Community First Credit Union. Started my career as a mechanical engineer, but always kind of geeked out with Excel and data visualization, and at some point just decided that this is what I really liked and what I had more passion towards, and was lucky enough to be able to have a career change, if you will. Went back to start from the beginning, from an analyst, and went up from there. Never looked back. I mean, this is it's a career that I'm really happy with, and that really what got me that spark, which I'm sure you'll appreciate, was learning Tableau. So we can, like you said, we can talk about it a little bit later as well. But really, data visualization pulled me into data analytics. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken you to sunny Florida, and you're the director now. So it must have been really good. I'm going to share my screen, and I think it actually takes us very well into the first part, which I wanted to talk about, and that is, like you said, let me make that, like how did you get into this? Because you just said something that I actually wasn't aware of, and that is you actually came from an engineering background, but then somehow this Tableau comes into the picture and something happens. Was it like at the current job they needed someone to look at this, or did you find it, or how did you kind of jump on that?
I kind of knew that was the direction I wanted to take before I was introduced to Tableau, because I created data visualization and dashboards, but all with Excel, because at that point those were the tools that were available to me.
Yeah.
I did some research outside of the work, and found the wealth of the world of data analytics and data visualization.
Yeah.
And we have this awesome company here in town called NLP Logics, and I was able to get in there for something kind of like an internship, not exactly, but they were willing to take me on and teach me data analytics from scratch. And the tool that they used at the point was Tableau, and they pretty much said, "All right, here's Tableau. Go play with it and see what you can come up with and what you can do with it." And the resources, the questions and answers were all around, and it was just the really best way of starting. They always say the best way to learn a language is to be immersed in an environment where people speak that language.
Yeah.
And so in my case, it was the same for data analytics. I was surrounded by statisticians and developers and data engineers, and any questions that I could come up with, I had the answer to.
Okay, nice. Yeah, because I've used Tableau quite a bit before, and I remember it always seemed really good if you were good. Like if you had Excel and you wanted to get this visualized quickly, to get it in the way it was set up. And I do really like, it's very strong on the drag and drop with the pills and all that stuff. So I remember it was set up really good. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but I guess that is more or less, if you look at how people get into it today, there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of jobs, people want to get into it. I guess you were, somewhat, right place, right time, right people around you, and then you even had the right product introduced to you. I would say, in a
Hmm.
lot of sense, it must have been a really good starting point for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it was really nice. And yeah, I also think that a big thing that's going in Tableau's favor is that, to me at least, it was very, very intuitive. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a tool that you need to go take classes before you use. You can really start playing with it. Like you said, if you have a little bit of background and you know what databases should look like. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
just loved it.
Okay, so that was back in the days, Excel, Tableau. But today, as the if we look at where you are today, maybe back then, the challenge was, okay, I need a visualization tool. I have Excel, and you had that. But today, you're the director of data analytics. And this is my next question.
Hmm.
What do you find challenging today, from maybe from more of a bird's point of view, which you might have to have now, versus back then where you were more hands-on in the spreadsheets?
Yeah. So I think the biggest challenges are not from the technical perspective, because the tool I'm using, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, Power BI, Tableau, they can do the same thing. R,
Mm.
Python, they can do almost the same thing. It really a matter of what, you know who the person is who's working with them and what they can do. I
Uh-huh.
think the biggest challenges are from outside of the analytics team.
Hmm.
So you need to have support from the leadership of the company.
Yeah.
If the leadership of the company don't believe in data driven insights,
Hmm.
then there's nothing you can do about it. If they don't allow you to use resources and hire the right people and do the right stuff,
Yeah.
or even, at the end of the day, listen to what you have to say, um, then nothing really can work.
Yeah.
um, One of the biggest, I wouldn't say challenges, but points of frustration,
Hmm.
um, that I've encountered, not necessarily where I am now. Where I am now, I have full full support from leadership, but I've been in places before where you encounter, people say, "Oh, I don't understand why we need a dashboard. I've always been doing it with tables and spreadsheets. I've been in
Yeah.
this business for 30 years, and I don't need some new technology to tell me how to do things."
Yeah.
So in my mind, that's, the biggest hurdle towards progress. I don't want
Yeah.
to do that because it's new, and it's a scary conversation to start having with people.
Yeah.
Um,
Change
and then,
management,
yeah, yeah.
always fun.
Um, and then, actually, back to the technical side,
Yeah.
there is this elusive concept of a single source of truth,
Hmm.
that people are talking about all over the place. I think that's another challenge when you start dealing with data. If you have, you know 10 different answers to the same question, because there are different sources of data, you collect data in different ways, and they're not matched and they're not merged, and that might be a problem that will kill your reputation from the start.
Yeah. So, and I think, I think it's a very good point, and I think it's something that reflects very much where you are today and things you have to think about today. Um, but if you then think about as you have progressed in your career, because you said yourself, I started out with the spreadsheets, and
Hmm.
then Tableau came into the picture,
Hmm.
but somewhere along this route towards the director of data analytics, you have probably, at least I would perceive it, you have learned to maybe raise your sights a little bit and look around and think about, scalability, integrations, these kind of things.
Hmm.
When did you kind of, when in your career did you start to think about these things? Like was it early, or did it came like naturally for you as a person, or is it something that you specifically went after? And the reason I'm asking is because I mean, you're on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. We see all these people that talk about data. There's so much focus on the technical things. How do you kind of drive that? How do you become that person, do you think, that can help drive those thoughts?
I think it definitely came with management position, because before that I didn't have to worry about it, right? if my task was to create a dashboard and
Yeah.
to maintain the database for the dashboard, then that's what I did, and kind of that was where I looked at.
Yeah.
But once you're in charge of uh, making the decision of what will that dashboard be used to do,
Yeah.
and you find out that, oh, maybe there are 200 people who will need to use that, and the database is no longer an Excel spreadsheet that you manually update. Now you have a live connection to a SQL server, so you need to think about all these long-term scalability as you build it.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think it was definitely something I had to learn to do.
Hmm.
And there were probably a few occasions where I built, the best solution, but it wasn't scalable. And I found out a couple months into it or a year into it, like, oh, I
Yeah.
should have done it that way and not the way I did it, because that would have made it much easier to change and to grow.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. Making mistakes, I think, is a great way of learning things, as long as you can
Yeah.
actually learn from from those mistakes.
Yeah, of course. It's the name of the game, and especially in technology where things changes so much.
Oh yeah.
And hindsight is 2020. So it's easy to look back and say what you should have.
Yeah.
So um, you might not, you probably noticed or you didn't, but I changed the order of the questions. And the reason
Okay.
I did that is because you touched on it quite early, and that is, your focus on, it seems like, you're one of those guys that are able of putting the technical stuff to the side a little bit and then think more holistic. So, I mentioned this one earlier, and then, you have business knowledge, technical knowledge. And when I say technical knowledge, I mean tools. And then I've said
Mhm.
communication. Those are kind of the three pillars that I think are
Yeah.
very important. And if you had 10 points across those three, how would you distribute those?
Um, I think I would give the most points. So let's say, let's do a 4.5 for communication,
Hmm.
um, 3.5 for technical, and then, where are we? 7, 8, 2 points for business. Um, I think I think communication. When I say communication, I'm talking about being able to ask the right questions and being able to uh, share your process with your end users. For example, one of the probably a critical juncture within any analysis work is working or meeting with the end user, because we as data professionals, we are supporting somebody else, right? We give
Yeah.
insights to somebody who's actually going to do something with them. And it is crucial for us to understand them, to know what they want, what they need. Sometimes they
Yeah.
can't even tell us what they need. We need to kind of be really good at interviewing them and getting that knowledge and understanding from them.
Yeah.
And then be able to work in a team. That's also, in my mind, a communication skill, right?
Yeah.
And these are things that are harder to learn.
Yeah.
So you really need to have them, in my mind, as first priority. Technical knowledge, obviously super important, but easier to learn.
Yeah.
So you need to have some sort of background and understanding, but it is not that important. If you can use Tableau, Power BI, for example.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the tool itself is less important to me.
Yeah.
And again, if I need somebody to run SQL queries, or to create them, to write them, I'm perfectly fine with them using Google to find answers. Right? They
Yeah.
don't need
Of
to
course.
to memorize the language, but they need to know what to look for and how to look for it.
Yeah.
Um, and then the
No, and
business knowledge. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, 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 please, please, please finish.
Yeah, and I think that the business knowledge is really important, but we as data people, as data practitioners, um, are kind of lucky to be in a industry or in a field that can be applied, anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're a good data analyst, you can work in healthcare, and you can work in finance, and you can work in manufacturing, right? The skills, the raw skills, are still the same ones. Obviously, you need to understand the environment you're living in, you're working in. But in my mind, in this order, that will be the third priority.
Yeah, and I think it's so important, especially as data gets bigger. The more more different types of people that want to understand what you've done, how was it created, what does it mean, and how do we use it. That communication thing is really important. And I
Absolutely.
would imagine as a hiring manager, it's important for you to know that when this person goes out and talks about this and does this and try, he's basically an enabler. That's usually what I tell people. You're very often a enabler of data culture or data
Hmm.
as a possibility within a company. And it's important that it's not your Tableau expertise that is enabling people. It's if they understand what you've done with Tableau and if they
Absolutely.
can use it themselves.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, completely agree with that.
Tell you what, let's I think this kind of transcends well into your thoughts on this. And in terms of, let's see if I can get this. I'm trying to format my PowerPoint while I talk to you. It's great idea, but it is what it is. Um, if we think about, we spoke a little bit about what we see as the essentials, and I think, you know, and there's so many people that wants to break into this, and they want to understand, what is a hiring manager looking for? What can make me stand out? So, what do you then think? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but what do you think sets a candidate apart then, if
Hmm.
you were to hire someone and kind of get them to work well in your organization or team?
Yeah. So I think that question uh, would have two separate answers depending on the type of role. So, and
Uh-huh.
I'll separate it to entry level role versus a more experienced role. So
Okay.
if I'm interviewing somebody for a more experienced role, um, I will definitely look for the technical experience, right? I need
Yeah.
somebody who has a few years working with SQL, who understands what's happening in the background, how to manipulate data and how to present it and how to, you know, find these nuggets of insights in it.
Yeah.
Um, and that will definitely be a very important portion of what I'm looking for, as opposed
Mhm.
to entry level. I'm a, there's a lot of, again, you mentioned the conversation on LinkedIn. uh, I see a lot on LinkedIn now, people talking about those elusive entry level positions where people are looking for, companies are looking for 5 years experience for an entry level.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer that if I'm looking for, and I do have entry level positions, uh, I really almost don't care about the experience there, because again, by definition, entry level, they should not really have an experience. So I'm
Yeah.
looking for somebody who I can click with, right? I can talk to, I can communicate. Somebody who's not afraid to ask questions. I think asking questions is a super important skill. As opposed to being afraid of asking them because you don't know how people will react, or you think people will think you're stupid if you ask a question. um, you can't really learn if you don't ask questions. If you think you already know everything, that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
I'll probably not hire somebody who think they have nothing to learn. I'm looking for curious people,
Yeah.
because like I said, in this industry, I want somebody who will eventually understand. If I'm, working in a credit union, I want somebody to understand the financial world, but I don't necessarily need somebody who came from that world. They need to want to learn it though. So
Yeah.
absolutely, being curious is a super important skill. Um, I need somebody who can learn from their mistakes. So I usually ask in interviews, tell me about the failure you had. How
Yeah.
did that happen, and what happened after that? Um, if you make a mistake, that's completely fine. The question is, what did you do with it? If you repeat your mistake again and again and again, then maybe
Mhm.
there's some issues there. And I think these are really the most important things I'm looking at. And the technical obviously it needs to be there,
Yeah.
but not as a first priority.
No, and I think it makes sense. And I'm gonna try and ask you a difficult follow-up question
Hmm.
that I know that people watching will appreciate, and that is, there are some things that you have mentioned. There are some soft skills, and I fully, I agree. If you're experienced, there are, self-sufficiency, a certain technical level. It's kind of, I understand what I'm paying for. I expect. But if it's an entry level, you spoke a little bit about, that they click, that they're quick, curious, and all these things. But if we look at how a lot of people try to get jobs today, they're working on portfolios. Um, they are like in the previous talk, I spoke to one guy who was on Upwork, and I actually thought that was a really great idea because that I was really impressed by that. But what I'm trying
Hmm.
to get to is how do you display those skills without like how do you like how would you say what is the essential stuff to kind of get your foot through the door so that they can sit down with you and you can kind of get that feeling and that's
Yeah.
it's hard to say, but it's just interesting to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So you're right. Resumes are a hard medium to kind of tell the true the real story about who the person is.
Yeah,
Um, but even the way people write their resume is telling. Um,
yeah,
how organized it is, what comes first tells me what
yes,
they place as their top priority.
yeah,
If there's a little blurb in the beginning, so that's telling. If somebody says, I want to learn, I want to play with data, I enjoy it, I love it, as
yeah,
opposed to I'm looking for my next challenge because I bought a bigger house and I need to afford it. So there
yeah,
are definitely things that um, uh, are important in the
yeah,
resume. Um, and that's an interesting point, because it might be that in an interview I'm able not to focus on the technical stuff,
yeah,
because that technical stuff was already there in the resume and kind of put you in the door to begin with.
yeah, true,
So yeah, if you don't know, any Excel, or you never touched a SQL, then you're probably not gonna get an interview for a data analyst position, right?
yeah. But I think it's a good, I agree because I've interviewed entry levels before, and presentation is huge. uh, Even presentation on a resume, what do you focus on? Sometimes, I get resumes where there's, 20 different tools, and the immediate thing I ask myself is, okay, so do you understand the value of focus? Is what I ask myself. If you put down, like you said, what are the different, because the order, what you emphasize, it says a little bit about what is your focus. What do you
Hmm.
like if I were to if I've never met you and I meet you in the elevator and I say, here's a paper about me. I want you to pay me in return for a favor. And these are my essential things you need to know about me so we can
Yeah.
have that conversation. The real question is, what are you putting forward and how do you present that? I think it's huge.
Yeah.
Um, it's so easy to oversee if you don't have someone who tells you if it's presented well or not, if you don't get that feedback, if you don't have like almost like a feel for it, it
Hmm.
can really make or break you. Then you don't get to sit down and have that conversation where they can kind of, you know, uh,
Yeah.
be that
Yeah.
super
Absolutely.
social person. I know people that will be watching this, they will be, the technical tools, they'll be curious about that. But instead of technical tools, maybe just technical skill sets that you see as essential today. Any thoughts on what you see as a good mix there? Would
Yeah.
be
So
interesting.
absolutely, a understanding of database and structures. You know, I need somebody who understands, for example, the concept behind joins, right?
Yeah,
I don't necessarily need somebody who knows how to write it right
yeah,
away in like in any program in SQL or anything like that. But somebody who can understand that if I have one list of names and another list of
yeah,
grades, there
yeah,
need to be a field, a identical field in both of them that I can, join it on.
yeah,
If that concept, if that initial understanding is not there, then that's a big problem to do anything more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Um, so definitely some knowledge of or understanding of numbers and database connections. Um, I need somebody who can at least learn the best practices of data visualization and understand that there's importance in the way you present it from a
Yeah.
technical point, right?
Hmm.
Because there's a huge difference between putting information in a line graph or a bar chart or a pie chart. The implications of that are big, and I've been talking about it. I have different talks about data visualization and how numbers can lie, and there are awesome books out there and courses and different talks.
Yeah.
um,
For sure.
I think from a technical point of view, again, doesn't matter what tool you're using. um, the presentation, data visualization is a critical point of any data analysis.
Yeah.
um, and then in between, and again, that depends on the organization and on the function that
Yeah.
you're doing. You have all the skills from being able to create regressions and being able to train different models, and uh, that really depends on, because you have the organizations who use analytics mainly as descriptive analytics, just to kind of show what they're doing reports
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And then there are companies who are doing predictive and trying to figure out into the future. And for
Yeah.
that, you'll have to have a different set of skills, I think.
Yeah. I think that's also, it's so important to touch on that, which skills you get to apply is very different from company to company. Like right now, it seems like a lot of people are, SQL, Excel, visualization tool, Python or R. If I
Hmm.
know that, I will get a job.
Hmm.
But the real question is, when you get to the interview or the company you're talking to, do you then understand? Do you understand how these tools fit in there as you guys talk about it? Because it's going to be very different. Company, it can be different from ambitions, the team that they have, where they are, in their maturity in terms of getting data driven. It's so different, and I also think that's something that it's so easy to get caught up in learning all these things. Do you understand when you like how do you kind of take it out of the bag and say, oh, like I know this in this situation? It's also
Right.
super super important.
Right. There's a huge gap between learning anything in academia and actually using it in real life. Um, and that's in my mind, that's the biggest difference between hiring an entry level position and hiring somebody who's experienced.
Yeah.
Because they both know SQL, they both know how to write a
Yeah.
script, but
Yeah.
one of them actually used it outside of the textbook and
Yeah.
knows what it means to push to production, know what it means to clean data. And the other one, in academia, I remember that kind of shock moving from academia to real world. All of a sudden, you cannot assume that everything is right and everything is clean and everything is simple, because that's not
No.
the truth. That's not
you,
what you got there.
you got to compromise with the data. You're not gonna always get what you want, and often you're not even gonna get there, to be honest. But
Yeah.
okay. So now we've spoken a little bit about your thoughts today. What do you look for, and but then if you look at yourself, where you are today, if you were to start over and you were like, let's say you were an engineer today and you're like, hey, I want to get into this data stuff and I want to work with this
Hmm.
really great tool called Power BI.
Hmm.
How would you how would you I just have to take the opportunity
Go for it.
uh, before the next point. How would you kind of go about doing that, or what would be your process, the way you see it today?
Yeah. So I think today and in the past few years, these things became so easy to do because there is such a huge wealth of knowledge out there, and communities who are willing to share and wanting people to learn.
Yeah.
Um, so really, the best way would be even just going to YouTube and start taking some beginner classes in Power BI, and finding there are also tons of websites where people can get different projects and different examples and different exercises. Just
Yeah.
get find a free and open database, and just start crunching numbers, start running it through Power BI, and see what you get, and look for projects who have or asking for specific insight,
Yeah.
and just start working on it. There's that famous database of the Titanic, the who survived and who didn't, and just
Yeah.
take problems like that, and start solving, start practicing.
Then, so let's say you've done that,
Hmm.
and then when you get towards the job process, is there anything? I mean, when we think back to what you said before, you had a very natural evolution, but there was definitely like it sounds like you had a very natural curiosity also towards
Yeah,
this, and
yeah.
you were willing to kind of take it on and um jump into it,
Hmm.
which I think is a key thing here. What do you think in terms of applying for that job and trying to stand out? Is there anything? And the reason I'm asking is there's quite a bit of focus on portfolios and like how do you kind of, how can I say this, show your value
Hmm.
as as a potential data analyst before you have the actual experience is kind of what I'm
Yeah.
trying to get to. Uh,
I think that answer might not make a lot of listeners happy, but I think that the best way of doing that is by knowing people. So
oh,
networking
yeah,
over sending resumes.
yeah,
And there are also tons of opportunities to do that. So you go to
yeah,
a meetup, a conversation, or talk or something, and at the end of it, usually the speaker or the some of the organizers will let you know how to get in touch with everybody else.
yeah,
um, do it. Get in touch with people, start talking to people, schedule virtual coffees with people,
yeah,
um, because if you remember, we talked earlier about how do you make that leap from the resume to actually sit in front of people and talk to them.
yeah, yeah, of
um,
course,
this is how you do it, and
yeah,
don't just look for people who are hiring. Just
yeah,
talk to people, because you don't know who will hire tomorrow,
mm,
and you don't know who that person knows that is hiring.
yeah,
So really something that might not be um, n- you know every data person's nature to do,
no, no,
but networking, um, I think
it's huge.
is almost a critical skill to have. Yeah. And it's easy to
Yeah,
practice too, because you can
yeah,
start very small and with very low risk. Just meet with somebody and talk to them for 10 minutes.
yeah, and I mean, and once again, it's easy to say it, but if you actually do that well, you've exemplified so much of those communication skills that someone wants to see, because then they already know, okay, he has this, and he wants to job work within the industry or be part of what we do.
Hmm.
Let's find out if we can teach him that, and he can, like you said, conceptually understand it. Then we have the juggernaut left, just because. Actually, to be honest, I think Tableau is great. It's
Hmm.
just that I was just curious to why you think it is better,
Yeah.
and if
So
you
I,
have any
I
strong opinions.
I hope my thoughts are not going to disappoint you, because they're
No,
really
no,
anticlimactic. But
no.
I like Tableau because that's the first tool I started learning, and
Yeah.
and using, and it
Okay.
was super intuitive and super fun and super easy, and very very powerful.
Yeah.
So I never really, and the environment I was working in used Tableau, so I never
Yeah.
really had the need to do anything else.
No.
Um, at some point, one of the customers that we work with use Power BI, and I had to learn Power BI for that. And I didn't like it because it wasn't Tableau. not
No,
because it was a
awesome.
bad product, but it was just something else from something that I already knew how to do very well,
Yeah.
which kind of stands in contradiction to what I said earlier. We've been doing it always. We don't need to learn something new. But in this case, maybe I really did need to learn something new because the end result was very similar.
Yeah.
Um, I think for me today, the, if I had a reason to learn Power BI, would be if management decided, all right, we're no longer using Tableau, we now
Yeah.
need to use Power BI. That would be a good reason for me to learn Power BI. Or if I
Yeah.
was a consultant and I work with a client that had already Power BI. But other than that, I mean, if I'm coming into a place where I can choose one or the other, of
Yeah.
course I'll go with the one that I know better and I like better. And I
Yeah.
don't think I have anything bad to say about Power BI. I just like
No,
Tableau
no, no.
better.
Yeah, no. I'm just info. Okay, so I wanna round it off with just top 5 tips for prospective data professionals today. What do you have? And no, if you want to, you can do a specific order, or else you can do it randomly.
Yeah. So I think the first point is the only one that should be first, and everything afterwards doesn't have to come in order.
Hmm.
I think the first thing you need to make sure with yourself that you want to be in that world, that you want to do data analytics.
Yeah.
Um, so before you commit, learn
Yeah.
what it is. Start playing at home. Do you get this inner spark, inner nerdism when you play with data?
Yeah.
Does it make you happy? Because I think if you're lucky enough to have a career that also makes you happy to wake up in the morning, then really you made it in life, right?
Yeah. For
Um,
sure.
so if you want to break into analytics, make sure that you like it first of all.
Mhm.
Once you did, I think the good old Excel. You need to know Excel. You need to know how to manipulate data in there.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
I'm not going to say you have to know this function or the other, or you need to know VBA or
yeah.
but you need to be able to at least find answers.
Yeah.
And again, Google is an awesome tool. You don't need to
Yeah.
know all the formulas, but you need to know how to find them. You need to
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be
For
able
sure.
to
Yeah.
kind of think in those terms. Um, I think you need to constantly learn. So absolutely get into as many meetup groups as you can, and sit on lectures and presentations and have conversations with people, or just look at the feed on LinkedIn and subscribe
Yeah.
to data analytics hashtags, because it's an ever evolving field. So
Yeah.
in order to keep an edge, you have to be able to keep working and keep knowing what's new out there.
Yeah.
um, I think these are the important. I need one more point. uh, work on communication skills. So
Yeah.
virtual coffees are the thing right now. Practice talking. It can be selling, like marketing yourself. It can be talking about a product. It can be talking about a concept, about a
Yeah.
passion of yours, a hobby. But practice that. um,
Yeah.
because when you meet with a hiring manager in an interview, it is
Yeah.
obvious if you're a person who feels comfortable when talking to other people,
Yeah.
or not.
No,
And like you
definitely.
said, if you have two people who can both write scripts in SQL, but one can communicate that and the other can't, guess who's getting the job?
Yeah. There's no doubt. Okay. I think that's a good place to end it. So I'm just gonna round things off and say thank you for spending the time, sharing some of your thoughts,
A
doing
pleasure.
this virtual coffee thing with me. I reached out to you. We're having like a virtual um kind of like session, which I think it's fun to see that it's possible, and it's fun to be able to sit down and
Yeah,
actually share some thoughts with someone like this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for inviting me, and I love the idea. I love the conversation, and yeah, I'm gonna wait for it to.
The pleasure is all mine. And before you know it, I have to go across Florida to one of those Tableau conferences or something like that. Then you can even do the coffee in person.
I would love that.
If you have any questions, you can ask those in the comment section. Thank you again to Haim for taking the time and having this talk with me. Subscribe to the channel for more data career talks, and I'll see you guys next week.